Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The American Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has said that at this moment 10,000 North Korean troops are present in Russia, of which 8,000 North Korean troops wearing Russian uniforms and armed with Russian weapons have been posted on the Kursk's front lines. Although Anthony Blinken claims that the North Korean troops haven't been involved in any combat yet, but they could soon be deployed to fight the Ukrainian soldiers in the coming days. Interestingly, for its part, South Korea has said that it is considering to send a team of military monitors to observe and analyze the activities of the North Korean soldiers in Ukraine. How long the Ukraine war will drag on will depend a lot on what happens in the US elections. Donald Trump has insisted that he'll put an end to the Ukraine war, which experts say will be done by stopping military aid to Ukraine. So the question is obviously this: how close are we to the end of this bloody conflict in Eastern Europe, that along with the horrific war in the Gaza Strip will be Joe Biden's enduring legacy? If push comes to shove, and if Russia's sovereignty were to come under threat, Moscow has repeatedly said that it would not hesitate to deploy nuclear weapons. And this week, Moscow's nuclear saber rattling was again sounded loudly, as Russia simulated carrying out a nuclear counter-strike if it were to come under a nuclear attack first. From its Plesetsk cosmodrome in northwest Russia, the Yars intercontinental ballistic missile was launched to strike a target in the Kura test range in Kamchatka in the far east of Russia. The Sineva and the Buleva ballistic missiles were fired from submarines in the Barents and the Okhotsk seas. And the Tu-95MS strategic bomber planes, capable of carrying nuclear weapons, launched cruise missiles. Moscow claims these nuclear counter-strike simulations are all planned, but the West, led by the United States, sees them as Russia's ominous messaging. But the nuclear drills aren't the only problem that is plaguing the West. Even in the conventional weapons contest, the Ukrainian forces, backed by the West, have been consistently on the back foot throughout this war. On the 31st of October, the Russian Defense Ministry released this video of the Russian flag fluttering atop a TV tower in the strategic Ukrainian village of Krulykivka in the Kharkiv region. On the 29th of October, Russia claimed to have taken control of the Ukrainian town of Selidov, which had a pre-war population of about 20,000 people. As the Ukrainians dig through the rubble of their buildings to rescue those who are trapped underneath the debris, what is painfully clear is that the Russians are advancing at their fastest pace and are capturing more territory this year.
Tonight at 2 a.m., the enemy attacked us with a hybrid bomb. As a result, 4 civilian houses have been completely destroyed, more than 26 have been damaged. This is according to the information we have at 5 a.m. We have confirmation that 4 people have been killed, an elderly woman, 2 young men and another man. 1 more person is still under the rubble. Emergency situation rescuers are trying to dig this person from under the rubble.
In just the last week of October, the advancing Russian soldiers managed to push back the front lines and captured an additional 196 square miles of Ukrainian territory in the Donetsk region. The billions of dollars of weapons flushed into Ukraine by the United States and its allies have not been able to dent the Russian edge in terms of both weapon systems and troops that Russia has been able to field in this war so far. But now, the war is expanding. The Americans are apoplectic that North Korea has sent 10,000 troops that could be deployed by Russia in the Ukrainian war theater. Moscow has remained tight-lipped about these Western reports. But interestingly, the North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui, in her meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the 1st of November, asserted that North Korea will back Russia until victory is achieved in Ukraine. At its fag end, the Biden administration is preparing to pack its bags and leave the White House after the presidential elections. But Lloyd Austin has warned that the deployment of the North Korean soldiers in Ukraine could actually lengthen and broaden the war, and the volatile Korean peninsula could get sucked into the proxy war between Russia and the United States.
Ukrainian soldiers have the right to defend themselves, and they will do that. With the weapons that we provided and others have provided, that's to be expected. But if they are fighting alongside of Russian soldiers, they are co-belligerents, and you have every reason to believe that those kinds of things will happen, that they will be killed and wounded as a result of battle. So.
The Ukrainian people, much like the Americans, have no idea on who will win the US elections and whether the next president would occupy the White House or back the war in Ukraine with the same enthusiasm as Joe Biden did. In fact, the mood in Kiev is very sour. The common Ukrainians feel let down by their Western allies.
If Harris wins, it will be a continuation of the sham assistance to Ukraine, which means that they will talk and do nothing. If Trump wins, he will most likely push for an end to the war and give away a share of Ukraine's territory. In either case, Ukraine loses.
Donald Trump, who's vowed to end the Ukraine war if elected to the White House, has not disclosed his peace plan. But what he has made clear is that he does not think that Ukraine, even backed by Western assistance, can win this war. The road to a military victory for Kiev looks firmly shut. And for Joe Biden, who's getting ready to bow out of the White House, there appears to be no honorable exit from the wars that he has backed to the hilt. Beijing publicly slammed Islamabad on the 29th of October over its inability to ensure the safety and security of Chinese nationals who work in Pakistan. The Chinese ambassador to Pakistan, Jiang Zhaidong, speaking at an international conference on China in Islamabad, raised security concerns and even offered that both Pakistan and China should crack down on the terrorists jointly. The public chiding comes on the heels of a suicide attack claimed by the Balochistan Liberation Army near Karachi's airport last month, in which 2 Chinese citizens were killed and 10 others were injured. So why has Islamabad failed in putting a lid on attacks that target Chinese interests in Pakistan? Our next report gets you the details.
The $60 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or the CPEC, launched in 2015 with much fanfare as part of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, is a key infrastructure project which aims to enhance economic connectivity between Beijing and Islamabad. Under the ambitious CPEC, thousands of Chinese personnel are working in Pakistan on several projects. However, these Chinese nationals have been at the receiving end of Balochistan Liberation Army's wrath. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province by territory, but the smallest in terms of population. Despite being blessed with mineral resources and vast reserves of natural gas, the province has remained the country's poorest, giving rise to broader rebellion. The decades-old rebel movement blames the Pakistani government of neglecting its residents and unfair distribution of resources. Most prominent of these rebel groups in the southwestern Balochistan province is the Baloch Liberation Army. The BLA accuses both China and Pakistan of exploitation of the resource-rich province of Balochistan and has regularly carried out attacks targeting Chinese nationals. In the latest such attack, on the 7th of October, 2 Chinese citizens were killed. when a massive blast took place on a road near the airport of Pakistan's largest city, Karachi. The terror attack targeted a convoy of Chinese engineers and investors from the Chinese-funded Port Qasim power project. Indicative of Beijing's growing impatience with Islamabad, the public remarks on Tuesday by the Chinese ambassador to Pakistan, Jiang Zhaidong, came while he was addressing an international conference on China, organized by the Pakistan-China Institute in Islamabad. Demanding action against perpetrators of terrorist attacks, Jiang reportedly said, and I quote here, "It is unacceptable for China, and we do hope that the Pakistani side will ensure the safety and security of Chinese nationals working in Pakistan." Furthermore, Jiang emphasized that the security of Chinese citizens is paramount for Chinese President Xi Jinping. Early last month, Islamabad approved an additional budget of about $162 million for the armed forces, mainly to strengthen their ability to protect Chinese commercial interests in Pakistan. Reportedly, the Chinese ambassador has been assured that no stone would be left unturned to ensure the safety and security of Chinese nationals working in Pakistan. But the task is easier said than done, considering Pakistani security forces have found the going tough in battling the deadly decades-long insurgency by Baloch separatists.
Pyongyang claims to have successfully test-fired what it hails as the world's strongest strategic missile on the 1st of November. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, accompanied by his daughter Kim Joo-ae, oversaw the test and expressed great satisfaction at the successful launch of the Hwasong-19 missile, which flew higher and further than any previous North Korean missile. The launch came barely hours after the United States and South Korean defense chiefs called on Pyongyang to withdraw its troops from Russia, warning that North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms were being deployed for possible action against Ukraine. Now, Pyongyang has still not acknowledged the Western reports on North Korean troops' dispatch. On the day of the launch, however, the North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Song-hu, who was in Moscow, said that Pyongyang will stand by Moscow until its victory in the Ukraine war. Take a look at this report.
The development of advanced solid fuel missiles, quicker to launch and harder to detect and destroy, has been a long-cherished dream of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. On Friday, the North Korean state media released video footage of its newest and most advanced solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, Hwasong-19, and pictures of Kim Jong-un observing the test in his signature black leather jacket. Accompanied by his daughter Kim Joo-ae, the heir apparent. Kim Jong-un described the launch as an appropriate military action to send a message to the country's rivals. The footage showed a massive transporter erector launcher vehicle, commonly referred to as a TEL, setting up for the launch of the perfected weapons system. The North Korean state news agency claimed that the missile flew thousands of kilometers into the sky before falling into the sea east of the country. Reportedly, militaries in South Korea and Japan tracked its flight deep into space before it splashed down in the ocean between Japan and Russia. Experts are of the opinion that the missile test has been carried out to divert attention from mounting global criticism of the purported North Korean troop deployment to Russia. A day prior to the test, the US claimed that up to 8,000 North Korean troops had reached Russia's border region with Ukraine, trained and ready for combat. On the same day, Seoul claimed that in addition to troops, North Korea has sent more than 1,000 missiles to Russia as well as millions of munitions. Amid growing fears that the reclusive state's army will enter the Ukrainian conflict, North Korean Foreign Minister held talks with her Russian counterpart in Moscow on Friday, reaffirming Pyongyang's support to Moscow until its victory in Kiev.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea has unwavering confidence that the Russian military and people who have risen with resolve in the just struggle to end the high-handedness and unilateral actions of the United States and the West and establish a new international order will surely achieve victory under the wise leadership of Comrade President Putin. We affirm that we will always stand with our Russian comrades until the day of victory.
Returning the compliment, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov hailed the close ties between the two countries' armies and special services.
Bilateral relations between our two countries have reached an unprecedented high level over the past few years, thanks to the special attention paid to these relations by President Putin and Chairman of State Affairs Kim Jong-un. A qualitatively new level of these relations was adopted in Pyongyang during the historic meeting of our leaders with the signing of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty.
Lavrov also expressed gratitude to Pyongyang for what he described as principled position on the events unfolding in Ukraine. Both the ministries, however, chose to not even mention Western reports on North Korean troop deployment. The conspicuous silence gives rise to the inevitable question: is Russia on the verge of a military escalation in Ukraine, using thousands of North Korean troops said to be in Russia?
The Al Jazeera state in Sudan turned into a major battleground last week after one of the commanders of the paramilitary rapid support forces, Abu Akla Kaka, defected to the military. In what is being billed as the first high-profile defection, the Sudanese army claims that the commander brought with him a large number of his soldiers. In retaliation to the major setback, more than 120 people were killed by the powerful paramilitary RSF in attacks on villages in the Al Jazeera state. The RSF, however, has denied targeting civilians, claiming instead that its fighters clashed with the militias armed by the Sudanese army. The 18-month-long conflict in Sudan has killed more than 24,000 people. Additionally, more than 14 million Sudanese people have been forced to flee from their homes since the conflict began on the 15th of April last year. Our next report gets you more details.
Africa's third largest country by size, the Republic of Sudan, has been ravaged by war for more than 18 months. Long simmering tensions between the Sudanese armed forces under country's de facto leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary RSF led by al-Burhan's former deputy Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo erupted into an all-out war on the 15th of April last year. The trigger was the planned integration of the paramilitary RSF into the regular army, an internationally backed political transition plan. Rivals RSF and the Sudanese military have been battling over control of the country for 18 months now. Thousands have been killed and countless others have faced unspeakable atrocities, including rape and sexual assaults. Between 20th and 25th October, the RSF carried out a major attack across the Al Jazeera state. Mass killings, rape of women and girls, widespread looting of markets, homes and burning down of farms were reported. Though the exact death toll remains unclear, extensive massacres were committed by the RSF in village after village. On Tuesday, the US State Department condemned the attacks on villages by the RSF and urged an immediate end to the cycle of violence.
Over the last week, the Sudanese Rapid Support Forces has carried out a major and brutal attack across eastern part of the Al Jazeera state in Sudan, located just to the south of Khartoum. They attacked multiple villages in the area, deliberately targeting civilians. Many of the RSF's victims have been children and women. The United States condemns these attacks in the strongest terms and calls on the RSF to halt violence against civilians immediately. The group's leaders have repeatedly committed to their obligation to civilian protection under international humanitarian law, and they must uphold those commitments.
A day earlier, in a UN Security Council meeting on the situation in Sudan, the UN Secretary General had said that he was horrified by reported attacks against civilians committed by both sides in Sudan.
And I'm also horrified by reports of attacks against civilians perpetrated by forces affiliated with the Sudanese armed forces in Khartoum, and by continued mass civilian casualties due to apparently indiscriminate airstrikes in populated areas. The perpetrators of serious violations of international humanitarian law must be held accountable. We have consistently appealed to both sides to end the fighting and come to the negotiating table. But instead of lowering tensions, they are escalating military action. Meanwhile, outside powers are fueling the fire. We face the serious possibility of the conflict igniting regional instability from Sahel to the Horn of Africa to the Red Sea.
About 25 million people, approximately half of Sudan's population, are in need of all types of humanitarian assistance, whereas more than 18 million people are grappling with food insecurity in the agriculturally rich nation. Hunger, not just fighting, is rampant across Sudan now, driving displacement. Additionally, one of the worst education crises in the world is unfolding in Sudan, with the vast majority of the country's schools closed due to the conflict. Interestingly, despite the suffering, Guterres said at present the conditions do not exist for the successful deployment of a United Nations force to protect civilians in Sudan. The fear is, unless the two warring generals come to the negotiating table, one of the worst humanitarian nightmares in recent history will continue to worsen with each passing day.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.